Hi everyone, it's a beautiful day here in Northwest Alabama. 2 weeks and 2 days after I applied the Formic Pro, I'm here to see what the results are. I'm here to see how the colonies have progressed during that time. I was hoping to get this done Friday afternoon or yesterday, but the weather did not allow that really. Friday and Saturday was both rainy with highs in the low 50s. So I elected to wait till the day. The temperature right now is a little bit breezy, but it's in around 63 right now, as we're just a little bit after lunch or afternoon. So my goals today is to do a mite wash, assess the colonies, add supers if needed. I'm also prepared to make a split if I find further swarm cells. I also want to take a few minutes to look and kind of carefully gauge to see if I see the same thing as I did last year with the Formic Pro, which was, it appeared that it shut the queens down about 3 days, give or take. I should say maybe 2 to 4 days. And if so, if I see this again, this to me it will indicate that I can use this in addition to the nectar management to further aid in swarm control. And the reason I see it that way is the math of it, the arithmetic of it. For instance, if the queen is laying around 1,500 eggs a day, that also means if she shuts down, that's, for instance, that'd be 4,500 eggs that was not laid for 3 days. So that would be roughly a frame. And also during that time, those first 3 days of the treatment, if the queen is shut down, there are also going to be, roughly 1,500 bees a day emerging. In my mind, in that 3 to 4 day period, that's going to be equivalent to pulling about 2 frames of brood out. That will be the same as just pulling some brood out and equalizing. So I kind of want to see if I can see evidence of that today. I want to see if the queens are laying good, if I've lost any, if any of them's in the process of trying to swarm. Just kind of want to see what's going on. But anyway, we're going to get my smoker lit and get started. I'll show my mite wash results and everything. I'm only going to do a mite wash on these 5 strongest colonies here in this yard. And the reason is they're the 5 strongest I had left from selling off. So they're the ones that's going to have the highest mite count, and the only ones I saw mites in when I did the application a couple of weeks ago. So these are the ones I want to see. I'm hoping if I see zeros and no more than 1 in my wash, I'll be really thrilled, and the bees will be really good for this honey production season. Let's get my smoker, my gloves, and let's get started. All right, I'm going to start out with the one I didn't show in the video here a couple weeks ago, but it was about to swarm. So I want to start with this one and see how it's doing. Well, there's still a lot of bees in here, so I don't believe they've swarmed since I applied the treatment. So I'll pull a couple frames and see what's going on. So this is one of the empty frames I put in. A little bit of nectar up here, just a little bit. Trying to make a queen cup right there. This was one that was full the last time. They sure are roaring pretty loud. I hope this don't mean they're queenless after I tore out all them cells. So this was one of the empty frames from before. Not seeing nothing in there. So I'll pull out one of the empty frames from here and see what we have. Nothing in that one. Right there's relief. I was getting to wonder, so we have some young brood here. Yeah, we're queen right, because right there's some eggs down in there, so that's good. I was getting concerned already. So this is an ideal frame. It should be loaded with nurse bees, so I'm going to get my sample from right here. So the field force, if any's in here, the older bees will fly out, leaving the young nurse bees in here, and that's the ones I want to sample. I do want to take a couple moments to look, make sure the queen is not in here. and I don't see her in here, so I'm good to get my sample. And I didn't use all those nurse bees, so I'll put them back on top. Now I have the Carousel Varroa tester. I like this really well. It snaps on top like Tupperware. I just dumped a half a cup of bees in here. I'm using the Dawn Ultra mixture at a ratio of 2 tablespoons per gallon. I only needed a half a gallon for today because I'm only washing 5 colonies. So I put a tablespoon in half a gallon, which is the same ratio. And I've learned through trial and error on Randy Oliver's website and other places, they recommend you agitate for a minute. And I've tried this several times. I do about 20 seconds. From what I can tell, that's good enough. And I think it's important to swirl it like this, get the bees going round and round. The mites are the heaviest thing in there along with the bees, so they're going to want to go to the bottom. So if I swing them around this, get the bees swirling in there, the mites will get slung out through the slits and on their way down to the bottom simply because they're heavier than the water. If I was to slosh it straight up and down, the mites will have a very good chance of getting thrown back in there with the bees, and the results might not be as accurate as they could be. So I feel like this is the most accurate way to do it. And I know while I'm talking there, I've been swirling a good 20 seconds. Now I still got about 20 mites in here. So that's disappointing right there. I'm going to try to hold this up here if you're hoping that you can see it. But most of the mites have fell down there by my little finger. But I counted 20 or 21 mites in there, so that's disappointing. I don't think it has to do with the product. I may have given it too much ventilation, I don't know, but that's not the result I'm looking for. So that's way too high. So now my initial thoughts are, why did this not work as good as perhaps it did 2 years ago? And I don't have really a definite answer to that. My immediate thoughts will be to question, is that too much ventilation? Could I have gotten away with the permanent entrance I have down there of 3 square inches? I could have. I don't know for sure. I didn't go over double deep depth, which on the instructions shows to be okay. I may need to look at trying to do this in a smaller area still. I mean, it is what it is. I'm going to have to let her ride for right now because the nectar flows here. So I'm going to have to harvest this honey in this yard really early, like the middle of June, late June at the latest, and I'm going to have to do a treatment then, and then I'll have to do another treatment probably sometime in August to keep these colonies healthy. That's not a good thing to have that high of a mite count approaching the middle of April. That's not good at all. This colony will probably have an upwards of 50 to 60 mites in the wash towards the latter part of June. So that's my thoughts on the performance for this one colony. And I can tell more about it when we do the other 4. Again, I did not do a pre-treatment wash simply because I knew the mite treatment, I knew the mite numbers was already high from putting the ApiGuard on due to seeing mites in some of the drone brood. Now we do see confirmation of that. So now I want to see if I can kind of establish how long the queen potentially was shut down in this colony. And I want to look at some of these frames that have brood in it and see what I can see. So this frame would be empty at the time of application, and this one here would have had brood in it. So let's see what we have here. So we have a good amount of young larvae in there. One thing that is clear right now is the colony is not attempting to swarm again yet. A lot of bees, a lot of drones, some pollen, and a little bit of fresh nectar on this outside frame. See some eggs and young larvae in this frame. So I've looked at 3 different frames of brood. My best guess here is probably went about 2 to 3 days without the queen laying in here. Seems to be a lot more eggs in proportion to cap brood and very older larvae. So this is similar to what I saw last year. I noticed on the way up here tulip poplar trees are starting to bloom. This colony still has plenty of space, so I'm not going to put an additional super on it, but I will be checking back in about a week, and I'm going to close off this opening to the front. But I do believe it will take at least 2 weeks for this colony to get in a predicament to where it might try to start rearing queens to issue a swarm. And I kind of want to push that envelope, being that the apple trees are blooming right now, if that's truly going to be the swarm cutoff date for this year, because what I just saw, there's no way this colony can get in that configuration in the next week or so, unless the nectar really turns on in the next 2 days to where they can get plugged out and begin the queen rearing process. That's all theory based on Walt Wright's teachings. So this is a good opportunity for me to see if that's going to pan out this year. So this is basically what you just saw there. So what I'm going to do to these colonies here, at least 5 of them. The 2 that was overwinter nukes, I'm not going to check them probably that close as I just did this one. These other 5, just as you saw there, these are ones that's going to have the high mite counts, and this one still has way too high of a mite count. So, all right, I've completed this yard and also completed the 5 mite washes I was going to do. The one that I showed was pretty much the worst one. I found another one that was similar to it, and it appears to be queenless as well. So there was very little brood left in it. That could be a situation, a lot of phoretic mites. So this is what I come up with in my washes. I had 2, 20, 5, 21, and 1. That's kind of disappointing. I was hoping to have all 5 zeros, maybe a 1 in one of them, and that's what I've had in years past. There's no indications none of them is wanting to swarm. Also, some of them are starting to put on a little bit of nectar, but they still have plenty of room. I'm not going to put any supers in them. I may go ahead and bring my excluders up here in about a week and shake them down, get the queen in a brood box, and I think, in my opinion, I'm going to not have to worry about any swarming issues here. None of these are even close. Now the results of the formic this year are overall are disappointing. I can't stand here and tell you that I blame the product. Now what I want to bring up will be the differences that I've saw since I first used it. This is the 3rd time I've used it. The first time I used it was back in 2020 when I first decided to do some treatment, and that was like in early May. Done had 4 or 5 supers on each one, and I didn't get the Formic Pro. I got the Miter Weight Quick Strips, and based on, I didn't do any washes at that time, but based on what I saw later that summer, I think there was very little efficacy due to the hives being stacked so high already. And then last year was the 2nd time I used it, and the product I had last year, it was Formic Pro, but it did not have the same paper wrapping as this did, and they probably off-gassed a little more intensely and stuff than this product this year did. And I know it was different because I went and helped somebody else last year put theirs on, and theirs had the paper like mine had this year. And that paper, evidently, that newer paper that they're putting on there, it must be slowing the off-gassing down quite a bit more. Or I do think Formic Pro is a good product, I've just got to adapt what I'm doing to make it work. I know it's going to work. I believe in it. I'm confident in it. So I'm not in any way faulting it. I've got to study this. I may reach out to them. The benefit to this is I've got it documented on video, and hopefully I can get someone there to look at it and give me an opinion. My gut feeling tells me it's a combination of that new paper is not off-gassing as quickly and intensely as it was, and I probably provided a little too much ventilation, and it may turn out that the 8-inch opening I have on the permanently attached entrance reducers may be sufficient. And also the fact that I added the second medium to some of them created a bigger volume, that may have contributed to it as well. So I'm going to probably reach out to the folks at Formic. I know that's not their name, but I can't think of it right now. I'm going to reach out to them and see what they say, and I'll give an update on that and see. But also some other changes. This is the first time I've used it with true solid bottom boards, and I've had those solid bottom boards for a few years, and I just switched to them this year. Now the past couple of years I still have my screens on there, and I put some of that cardboard stuff under there. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically like they use on campaign signs. It's really durable, so that's kind of cut it off. But I'm pretty sure these hives are tighter than those was, and yet the efficacy just wasn't there like it was last year. So that wraps up this yard, and that's going to be all the mite washing I'm going to do. Okay, so now it's been a few days since I washed these results for my post-treatment, and I've had some time to reflect on all the events that occurred up to the application of the Formic Pro. First of all, one's initial action might be to blame the Formic Pro, perhaps something about the product, but I already know that the Formic Pro is a great product, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you that it was the problem. I had 2 good results last year. They have 2 good results in other areas. It's clearly something I've done, so I have got to figure out what conditions I created to cause that efficacy not to perform as desired. So the next day I got on Knot Apiary's website, and they got a submittal place on there where you can submit questions. But I was really impressed with Tom Nolan actually responded to me personally, actually early the next morning. I really appreciated that response. I had the advantage of, just like you saw, I made a video, so I told him about the video, so he was able to go in there and watch exactly what I see, and he addressed some concerns he saw with some of the things I did, and he also kind of had some questions. So I'm not going to read exactly what I said, but basically I messaged him, told him this is my 3rd annual treatment with Formic Pro. I did not get the desired results this year, so I'm asking if I've done something wrong, and I linked in my video. I post-washed the 5 colonies. I did not pre-wash the colonies. I have never done that in the spring. That's probably a mistake. This year, my thinking, I had some different thoughts this year going into it, quite a bit different than last year. At the time, spring turnover was kind of completing this year, which was going to be early. We had some funky weather. I've never seen a spring like this, and here we are in late April, and I've seen it approach 95 degrees in April here in Alabama. But here for the next week to 10 days, we're looking at temperatures in the 60s and low 70s. Even though I'm out here in short sleeves, it's a little bit chilly for late April. So, but last year I was able to execute the Formic Pro treatment right at the end of spring turnover, around March the 10th. But after listening to Tom Nolan's interview, he had an interview on Bruce Jen's channel, an outstanding video and great information. If you've not seen that on Bruce's channel, Bruce's Bees, I highly recommend you check that interview out. That was a great job with that interview. Also, for the first time, I'm doing these treatments with true solid bottom boards. I've gotten completely away from screen bottom boards. That too was a concern for me that was kind of affecting me to be a little bit conservative and making sure I had adequate ventilation, and I may have overdone it a little bit. And the reason I did not do a pre-treat wash is on those 5 colonies up there that I'm washed, I think 3 of them we did see mites as we was breaking the drone brood apart, and I knew I had a pretty high mite load But if I had to do it again, I would do a pre-treatment wash on those. So I described to Tom that I have true solid bottom boards with permanently attached entrance reducer and how much it is, and to make up for that opening, I slid the medium super back a ½ inch, which would be the same mathematically, the same area of ventilation as if you had the entrance reducer totally removed. So by using the 3 inches that I have on the entrance reducer, then sliding the top, that super back a ½ inch, that's, I think it was a little over 11 square inches, so that's the same ventilation. And I described to him how I had the 2 mediums on top of the deep. He told Bruce about making sure the bees kind of have adequate room to smell that Formic Pro. They're going to kind of want to expand their cluster, so I did provide that. I noticed this year that the Formic Pro looked different when I initially took it out of the package, and I'd asked him about that. The paper wrapping looked a little different. You know, I asked him if they had changed that paper wrapping, and my thoughts was, you know, that paper, you know, that different paper wrapping was, you know, perhaps slowed the off-gassing down some, meaning the effect of the ventilation I had in there, it might, you know, weaken the efficacy of it. So to summarize, basically, you know, I told him I believed in Formic Pro. I was not trying to bash it in any way, just trying to figure out what I could do better or wrong, or what I did wrong. So the first thing he did was, you know, thank me for my support in using their product. So he told me he looked at my video, realized I had 2 medium boxes on there. I know they're not exactly, but they're relatively the same depth as deep 2 mediums. I mean, it is a little bit bigger, probably 30% more volume, but it shouldn't have been enough to have made that much difference. Now I did learn the first year I tried it, is back in 2020. I think I did it in early May, but I had decided I needed to do something. I ordered Formic Thin and put it on all my hives, and some of them I had stacked 4 and 5 highs. I did learn that first year, if you got them stacked up too high, you're not going to get efficacy, very good efficacy at all. So if you remember back in the video, as I put the application on there, I checkerboarded those mediums. You know, he expressed concern with me doing that, saying that, you know, I kind of broke up the brood there, and that probably had an effect on the efficacy, that, you know, that product needs to be as close to the brood nest as possible. And I totally agree with that. Thinking back on last year, I put the application on before I did any checkerboarding. It was actually 2 weeks before it was time. But this year, due to the hive strength, he stated you need to have 5 or more frames of bees in there, and my colonies wasn't quite there. And then he questioned me about the, you know, if I did a pre-treatment wash, and since I didn't, and that's where I made a mistake. And you know, I kind of wondered that going into it, but the importance of the mite wash. You know, we really don't know how high the numbers was to begin with, and it may have knocked down a great deal of mites, but since I didn't do a pre-treatment wash, I don't know. So in other words, the ones I had 20 in there on a pre-treat, it might have had 60 or 70. I mean, I don't know. I can guess, but without data or actually doing it, that's information that I let go get by. So that's totally on me. Now about the paper, he said they've not made any changes to the paper. As the product gets near to its expiration date, the paper changes the way it looks and everything, and that totally matched, because the Formic I had used last year, when I had ordered it and gotten it, it was like 2.5 to 3 months till the expiration date, but I did have plenty of time to get it on, so I did not use it when it was out of date. Then I ordered some last fall, and when I received it, and that's the Formic I used this spring, the expiration date is like April or March of 2024, so it was just freshly manufactured. And that's what he told me, you know, if it's a long time to the expiration date, that paper will look different. So that explained that. And he kind of brought up the question, you know, if I had permanent entrance reducers on the last time I used Formic, and the answer to that is yes. But even though I did have permanent entrance reducers at that time, I had the screen bottom boards, but for the last couple of years I've had the corrugated plastic up underneath them, and I know that's not airtight like a solid wooden bottom board, but I'm sure it had some effect. But that transition to the solid bottom board had me concerned about the proper ventilation. So I will consider this. I've got basically a whole nother year to think about it. And so even though here we are in late April, I'm already looking ahead to this thing next year, the spring treatment, which I will continue to do, and I will continue to use Formic Pro. Hopefully we'll have more of an average type winter / spring, and I'll be able to execute the treatment, you know, around March the 10th being that I didn't get the efficacy I wanted, it also tells me that I'm going to have to work really hard for the rest of the year and be very timely with my mite treatments to try to get, I'm behind on mites right now, so I got to try to get caught up and get at least a little bit ahead of the game. So what am I going to do the rest of the year to try to turn that part around? Well, whatever honey I'm going to get, I'm going to try to harvest it in mid-June, have all the honey off by June or the end of June. I'll go ahead and do a treatment there, and then I'll start with my regular treatment regime again in August. Depending on what kind of situation I'll get with the washes at that time, I may consider doing a treatment in the fall. And another thing I'll be doing is I'm going to be taking quite a few splits but that's it. I know that's a little bit lengthy. That's kind of the thoughts I have a few days after, you know, seeing the mite wash results from my Formic Pro treatment. Once again, I fully believe in Formic. I'm not bashing them in any way. I'm confident it was things I did in combination with the unusual spring weather that caused me to delay the treatment like I did. So it's a great learning opportunity anytime, in my opinion, when you don't have success. It's really important to analyze what you've done and make adjustments and learn and move on with it. So I will definitely have a game plan for next spring. And every time I use Formic, I learn more and more about it. But once again, I want to thank Tom Nolan with Knot Apiaries for the rapid response. And also, once again, if you want to check out Bruce Jen's channel, Bruce's Bees, he did an interview about a month ago with Tom Nolan. Great information. It definitely helped my understanding about the product. But I highly recommend you go check that out. Well, I want to appreciate you for joining me today for this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.